guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new entitled people content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first story is titled I'm Not Your Gardener. Hello. I know this story might be quite the same as other stories posted here, but this happened to me, quite a long time ago. Here it goes. Oh, the usual disclaimer. English is not my main language, but I'm trying my best. Any correction is appreciated. Thanks in advance. Ends, entitled Neighbors. They are 2. HPL, high-pitched lady. TD, tall dude. Knob, nice old bloke. When I was much younger, I had the chance of living a bit far from my hometown in a semi-rural area, at some place with a nice green space, next to a very nice neighbor, with her own green space adjacent to mine. It was some closed neighborhood, with a few common expenses for maintenance of the inner roads and such stuff, yet not with a wah in the same way as in the USA, according to what I read around here. There were just a few homes there, between 25 to 35. I can't recall exactly now. And everybody had an equal vote on issues regarding the common spaces and issues. There was never any problem. Really. Never. My nice neighbor was a lady in her 50s. She was very funny, witty, smart, really lovely. She had a BF, who used to be there from Friday to Sunday every week, and he was equally nice. Adorable people both of them, really. I always helped her with her green space, quite more than a garden, whenever I took care of mine, which was quite often. I didn't mind helping her with that, since her BF wasn't able to. It wasn't that easy for him to do that stuff since he had some back issues and was getting treatment for it, and for me it wasn't a big deal. And after all the tasty stuff she cooked and gave me, "Hey, try this, tell me if you like it," was a recurrent sentence. It was the least I could do. Also, her 2 dogs were with me all the time when I was in her place, and they were adorable. Well, as it happens, one day they decided to move to some city quite a few hundred kilometers from there, and get married, so she put the house on sale. Some people came to see the house, which was beautiful. So, I was doing the usual gardening work at her place when the couple who later bought the house were first visiting. I didn't pay much attention, but I remembered afterwards it was them because she, the girl in the couple, had a very distinctive voice, in a very high pitch, yet not unpleasant. Her unpleasantness would show later, but not regarding her voice. Also, her husband was very much taller than her. Like 2 heads taller. TD, tall dude, from now on. One day my neighbor and her BF said their goodbyes, left with me a few things to donate. The ones they couldn't take care of, some for me if I wanted, I didn't, save for one great cast iron pan that somehow they wouldn't take, and left. I was sad to see them go, but they were chasing a good future together, so I was also happy for them. Well, the new neighbors, ends from now on, they got there one day, and I had been told beforehand by the realtor, so I worked a bit on their green space in order for it to look nice. The ends didn't say their hello, yet I didn't mind. They had their right to be less sociable than other people are, and unless they were annoying I was okay with that. A couple of days after they moved, I was taking care of the grass in my property, cutting some dried branches of a tree, plum, and other things, and HPL called me. I'm translating. "Hey, boy, when you finish there you got to do some work here too. The grass is quite grown, and we have more stuff to do." I was a bit confused at first, but then I remembered that when they first visited I was doing gardening stuff for my former neighbor, and that's why she must have thought it was my duty. I got close to her and explained her that I was doing maintenance of my property, that I was friends with my former neighbor and about her BF's situation and why I was helping her. She said, "Okay," and went inside her house. A few days later, could have been 3 days, there was the monthly neighbors meeting. After a few issues were debated, mostly about a few bumps in the dirt roads. Both ends said they had an issue, and HPL said that I was refusing to do my chores and that I should get a reprimand and not be paid in full. I was quiet and calm and was about to speak when another homeowner, who was aware of my relationship with my former neighbor, said, "He was never getting paid. He doesn't do any work for any of us, he was helping her neighbor, that is." I added that I had already told her that and that I explained to her my relationship with my neighbor, and her BF, and that I thought I made it quite clear. TD then said that when they visited the house they saw me doing the gardening and assumed that it was included with the common expenses, so it could be said they bought the property under those assumptions. At that moment I was quite amused because the whole issue was ridiculous. I told them something like this, not the exact words: "After these years I can't recall every single term. I'm sorry that you thought my gardening came for free with the house. It came for free with the relationship I had with my former neighbor, and that's it. No one told you that I would be working for you for free, or under common expenses, and your own assumptions are just flawed. I'm sorry." At that point, HPL lost her temper and shouted at me that I was disrespecting her husband and her husband's authority, in Tarabang, that I was rude and a bully, an accusation without any truth, and that I was purposefully refused doing their gardening. After her screaming show there was a very, very long and uncomfortable silence. I had never witnessed anyone shouting in those meetings, which were very amicable and quiet. So, I broke the silence and told her, "After what I'm going to say I will ask my new neighbors to explicitly point out in which ways I was, according to them, rude and a bully. I would also like to know in which ways I disrespected her husband and his supposed authority. And also, which authority do they think they have over me? On the other hand, they are right. I purposefully refused to do their gardening. And I will assure you that I will never do it, not even if they want to pay for it." They shut up and left before the meeting was over. Yes, the rest, stayed a bit afterwards talking about what happened. It was impossible not to. And then I went to the end's neighbor, a nice old bloke, Knob, who invited me and a couple other homeowners over. He lived to the other side of the ends. He offered us cappuccinos, or teas. He seemed to know a lot about tea. While there I had this idea and I told him, "Hey, I can come a couple days a week for a little while to take care of your plants and trees, more like bushes, really, and I can have a cappuccino here." He agreed. I had a triple interest in this. 1. The cappuccinos. 2. Angering ENs, who will see I do some gardening to their other neighbor. 3. NOB's granddaughter, who was beautiful, and I had already seen her around. It all went well. Cappuccinos were great, ENs were furious, and NOB's granddaughter ended up being a good friend of mine and introducing me to a friend of hers who would then become my GF, until she died only 6 months later, but that's another story. Oh, I also had another interest. NOB's library. He had great books and he lent them to me. I know it's not a very interesting story, but I think it depicts a couple of entitled individuals. I have a couple more ones with them. I lived there some 4 years, but enough for now. Important note. While the facts were as I wrote here, some words might not be entirely precise, because this happened more than 25 years ago, and I can't recall every single word. The next story is entitled Mother Thinks She Owns My House. Characters. M. Entitled Mother EK. Entitled Mother's Kid Op. Me GF. My girlfriend. Background. I live in a rather quiet apartment building, but as soon as this crazy idiot moved here, I knew that my situation was going to go tits up. I always try my best to be kind to my neighbors and it wasn't any different for M. I enjoy having small get-togethers in my apartment with a couple of my neighbors, so when M and her annoying as hell kid moved into the building, I decided to invite them to a weekly Friday adults-only game night. Don't judge, this was all pre-COVID. The party was set to begin at 7 o'clock, but M came a good hour late. Our parties are adults only because we have lots of alcoholic beverages and some weed set out. M decides to ignore the clear-as-day rule that kids aren't allowed and she decides to bring her little craphead to my house. As soon as I see the kid, I tell her no kids allowed, but then she goes and says, "It's okay. He has my permission." I sigh and ask her to come back in 10 minutes. Now me and the neighbors have to clear all of the weed and alcohol and pack them in the cupboards. She and her piece of crap come back in 30 minutes and immediately start eating all of my food. I'm a really non-confrontational person, so telling them to stop was a big no-no. This isn't even the real story yet. It's just some background to explain the crap show that is about to happen. The story. COVID happened. GF was staying at my place during COVID because her parents both have pre-existing conditions. We went through the whole process: quarantine, testing, and eventual moving. So one day, I was out of the house getting groceries when GF called me crying and saying she didn't feel safe in our apartment. Apparently my girlfriend was taking a shower when she heard someone moaning. She thought it was me, and she opened the curtain to see EK, that little ducker, beating his meat and standing outside the open bathroom door. She screamed, slapped him, and kicked him out. Hearing this, I immediately rushed home to comfort her, having absolutely no clue how that little bastard got into my home. As soon as I get home, I see him standing outside my apartment banging on the door, maskless. I tap her on the shoulder and start to explain to her that she really needs to control her kid. I tried to be as nice as possible even though I was seething with anger. I tried to tell her that I understand his body is going through changes and that he has urges, but breaking into people's houses and doing crap like this wasn't okay at all. Before I can finish, M goes off at me. She starts screaming that her son didn't break into anyone's house and that GF had no right to hit him. She said she was going to call the cops and tell them that we assaulted that little crap. Even though at this point, I'm literally about to slap her, I try my best to remain calm and ask her how her mistake of a son got into my house. The entitled mother starts screaming at me, and in her anger she lets it slip that during my neighborly meeting, in the background section, she took one of my apartment's keys. My brain just shuts off. GF comes out hearing the commotion and apparently heard that M stole my keys. GF goes off. She says she is calling the cops for stealing, breaking and entering, and invasion of privacy. At this point, my brain is still processing what M just said. M screams back that in her rental agreement, she was given access to all the amenities of the apartment and she somehow believed that my house belonged to them too. Keep in mind, I own my apartment. GF and I kept strong on her promise and called the cops right then and there. M got arrested, but I don't know what happened from there. All I know is that I changed my locks, got only 2 new house keys, gave one to GF and kept in, and bought one of those camera doorbell things. The next story is titled Ed and Em Assault Us for Refusing to Let Them Cut in Line at a Theme Park. Obligatory, not my native language, so please excuse my potential mistakes. Me, F25, and my best friend, also F25, who we'll call Anna, went to spend a fun day at a large theme park close to our home. It was on a particularly busy school holiday, the week of their Halloween special, so I had never seen the place so packed. You could easily wait for 1h30 for the main rides everyone wanted to do. All day long we've seen dozens of people cut in these ginormous lines, with lousy excuses such as trying to reunite with an imaginary relative who's conveniently all the way up the line. Where I'm from, it isn't uncommon behavior, and even though people disapprove, they're unlikely to make a scene. However, on this day it happened way more often than usual. We even saw 2 youth group coordinators who did it with their 20 kids. By the end of the day, we were ready to lose our crap on the next person who would try to do that in front of us. Nevertheless, we were having a great time, catching up and drinking hot pumpkin soup while we waited in line. Then we see a woman who's passing everyone behind us. I exchange a look with Anna, and we immediately position ourselves to subtly block the way. M comes up to me and tells me she's here with her family, but they are already further in line, and would I please let her pass blah blah blah. Her teenage daughter is standing behind her. I say no, and she looks absolutely gobsmacked. Then I notice Anna is having the same conversation with a man, Ed, I didn't notice before, who's holding the hand of a little boy about 7 yo. So we assume they're all together and conjointly tell them they're pushing it too far trying to cut the line as a group of 4. M then laughs faintly and tells me that they're not together, pretty certain it will help her case. It becomes apparent there are 2 different groups. But it is the last straw for us. 2 different entitled people at the same time. I am ripe to make a scene. Anna and I tell M and Ed they can wait in line like the rest of us, and if the rest of their families are really further in the line, their relatives can wait for them. Ed is not having it and gives everyone the shoulder to pass, with his small kid in tow. We don't really try to block him as he's very violent, pushing people around, and everyone's afraid to hurt the little boy who's being dragged by his father and barely protecting his face with his arm. Though we're still blocking M and her teenage daughter. She then starts to negotiate with me. But how could I deny a loving family their last ride together? But it's the holidays, shouldn't we be nice to each other on a day like this? But she asked nicely, so how could I say no? She's on to me non-stop for 20 minutes with her guilt trip. I keep telling her no. I explain she's not the first one to do that today, that we are on holidays too and want to get on the ride as much as anyone in that line. It tell her again her relatives could wait for her if riding together is so important. At some point I just repeat no over and over again, then I just stop answering her. I ignore her, drinking sips of my pumpkin soup while she keeps talking to the wind for 15 more minimum. I exchange a few looks with Anna while we both try to contain our laughter in this absurd situation. My friend was listening in on the interaction, but she didn't intervene much. I knew she agreed though, and she isn't shy, she just thought I was doing fine telling M off on my own. But M doesn't know her, so she assumes her silence means she might still have an ally. She turns to my friend and says, "But you should discuss it with each other, don't you think?" Before giving me an answer. I reply that I gave her an answer already, as I repeated no multiple times. But she insists that I never said no, and for Anna to share her thoughts. So I ask my friend with a smile, "Do you think we should let the lady pass?" And she replies loud and clear, "No," with a chuckle. M now looks on the verge of tears. She calls us witches as she thinks we're obviously enjoying tormenting her. Anna replies it's a good thing we fit the Halloween theme so well then. M tries to push us aside but we're not moving. We certainly didn't plan on going full force to block her, but she didn't know that. Someone else might have smacked her in the mouth right there. She pushes harder in a proper fury. We let her pass when she shoves us more violently aside, surprised by the confidence such a frail woman has that no one would dare lay hands on her even after she assaulted them. But then she is confronted with the family that was right in front of us. Obviously everyone has been watching this scene attentively and people won't let her pass after the bit she did. So she starts negotiating all over again, playing the victim like she was a martyr of God. Her daughter is just standing there, on her phone, trying not to make eye contact with anyone the whole time. M is talking to the other group, telling them how mean we were to her, and that we were obviously conspiring to mess with her with the knowing looks and grins we exchanged between us. I say we exchanged those looks only because she was being ridiculously entitled and it became laughable at some point. Then I tell her I had a mom just like her, who would have such tantrums in public, and when I was a teen I could have died from embarrassment. And that her daughter looks very embarrassed by the way. In the end, she is stopped by someone slightly up the line who makes it clear she would be smacked if she tries to shove them aside. But she successfully moved in front of about 6 people after us, so it was well worth it for her. I hope we ruined her day. The ride was very fun, and we just had time for another before the end of the day. That's where we met EM2 who would challenge us to a fistfight at the ride exit for not letting her family cut in line. But that will be in part 2, if you enjoy the first episode. The next story is entitled Dad Impatiently Demands Parking Spot Gets Instant Karma. I remembered this story a few years back while going on a job interview in a popular downtown area. I saw a similar story like this and felt this belongs here. So just to preface, this is a very busy downtown area and parking is far and few. I happened to find a prime parking spot on arguably the busiest street in that area. I was walking back from an interview and just as I go to open my car door to get in, a very flustered middle-aged man pulls around the corner with what I'm assuming are his kids and the interaction goes as such. Ed, entitled Dad, are you going to be moving soon? Me. Yes, I'm just about to leave now, you're welcome to spot. Ed. Can you get a move on, my kids are going to be late? Me, shocked at how rude he was. Sir, it will just be a moment as I need to plug in directions. Ed. That's not my problem, you can pull over in the next street and do that since you move like a sloth. At this point I don't engage further because this idiot is not worth getting angry over, so I take my sweet time plugging in my GPS to get home while he's yelling incoherent phrases at my window. And the most delicious part of this whole story is when I pull off, a drunk Karen whips around the corner, hits a car, and a cop who was closely behind angrily directs her to that spot before the guy could even pull in and he loses it. I'm driving away at this point and look back at the cop dealing with these two losers while I'm laughing all the way home thinking about if this guy wasn't such an entitled jerk he'd probably have that spot. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel and post some bear emojis in the comments.